and welcome to the Sunday Guardian show by Joyeeta Basu. As the year is about to end, 2025 is supposed to commence. There's a lot happening in the world. America will have a new president. There's so much turmoil that is going on in Syria, in the Middle East in particular. There is so much happening even in our neighborhood, with Bangladesh for that matter. And then there are things like, the whole world seems to be in some sort of a turmoil. There's flux. There's Ukraine war is still continuing. To shed an idea, to give us an idea about what exactly we can expect from the perspective of India, what India's foreign policy is likely to be in the new year 2025, specifically on certain areas when it comes to, say, the Middle East and all, and US, we are talking about BRICS, China, Russia, and all these areas, maybe a little bit of Bangladesh also. I have a very special guest with me to talk about these things. He has a vast experience. He has a glorious career in the foreign service. He is Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia, who is a former ambassador to Mexico, Myanmar, South Africa, and Kenya. He has also served in the Middle East, specifically in Lebanon, and also Southeast Asia and North America. And he is also author of 3 books. And apart from that, he is currently Distinguished Fellow in the Foreign Policy Studies program at Gateway House. Thank you, Ambassador, for coming. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Yes, and now I'm certain we will learn a lot from you during the course of the show. Now,
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, Ambassador Bhatia, tell me, right now, Syria is in the news. That's all we are talking about. What exactly is going on? And you must be seeing what Israel also has done, has captured a lot of land inside Syria. And then there is this thing, this Golani or Julani, however he is called. Now this man who with strong links with Al-Qaeda and ISIS, he is there. Apparently some massacre of the minorities have started. On the other hand, there is Erdogan. Then Russia has apparently left that region. Iran has left. So what is going on? Can you make sense of what is going on? And then what India's approach to this will be?
Thank you very much. I'm glad you have started off with the most difficult question. Let us get this out of the way. Syria is in a region called Levant. This is the region which has gone through turbulence over a long period. The best way to describe the present situation is to say that the Syrian civil war, which reached its climax in 2011 or 2012, has not yet ended. Now we are seeing a decisive phase in which President Bashar al-Assad has been overthrown as a result of the combination of a number of rebel forces which are led by HTS, the one which you referred as having Al-Qaeda very clear linkage. But there are other rebel groups as well. There is one major one in the south, there is another one in the north. The combined effect of collaborative enterprise of these rebel groups has been to overthrow the government. So now they are setting up their own government. Scholars are completely divided whether this will now lead to peace and stability, or whether it will be continuation of the internal conflict in some other form. What is certain is that the Assad era has ended, which lasted almost for 45 years. As you know, he represented a small minority sect, Alawites. Now mainly Sunnis are regaining influence, and so they are very important. You rightly pointed out about the geopolitical stakes, that is the role of the foreign powers here. So I think scholars are agreed that this change is positive for certain countries and negative for certain countries. It is positive for Turkey, Israel, and the US. And it is negative, very clearly negative for Hezbollah, which is a major militant force in Lebanon. It is clearly negative for Russia, because Assad had the protection and patronage of Russia, and it is very clearly negative for Iran. So it's very interesting to see that an internal turmoil in a country such as Syria, which is a big country, a very complex society, has now led to a very clear outcome whereby certain countries have lost and certain other countries have gained. Your last part of the question was, what does it mean for India? I think quite candidly, uh, India has some stakes, but not all that vast stakes in that country. Although we have enjoyed good relations with the Assad, family over a long period because they were secular, they were modern, they were not ultra-Islamic. But now they are gone, and so India will have to learn to profit from the change in whatever fashion it can. And given our orientation to be close to the US and Israel, I think it should be possible for us to leverage the change in Syria for our interests.
Well, that's a very interesting comment, because you see, so many people believe that we are actually close to Russia and not so much to US and Israel. So you think, and that is why I find your comment very interesting. Do you have to say anything about that, please?
Yes, I think I was referring particularly in the context of Syria and particularly in the context of the Middle East. If the question is with regard to India's equations with the US and Russia, then I have to basically say that there is enough evidence to believe that India-Russia relationship is doing very well, and there is every attempt by both countries to further improve and deepen that relationship, particularly in certain sectors, defense cooperation, for example. And if anybody had any doubt about the future of India-Russia relationship in the next year, two recent pieces of news were very helpful. One, that President Putin is likely to visit India right in the beginning of 2025, which will be a major event. And secondly, Defense Minister of India, Shri Rajnath Singh, has been visiting Russia recently, and there the fact that he was received by the Russian president and some very good views were exchanged at that very important meeting show that India-Russia relationship is in a good place. On the other hand, the fact remains that for the past 2 decades or so, India-US relationship has continued to progress. It has become a truly strategic partnership. There were some problems and difficulties during the Biden era, but still the cooperation went up. So in that context, I think in 2025, once President Trump settles down, it is hoped that the relationship would prosper further.
Okay, now if I can go back a little bit about when you're talking about the Middle East, in particular Iran, when we are talking about Iran, India has some sort of, we have in terms of, say, for example, we have been sending our ships to their port for joint military exercises. There is this port that we are building right almost next to Pakistan, Chabahar port. Now, and at the same time, Iran is so, virulently anti-Israel, and it is said that Iran is the head of the octopus with those tentacles, 7 or 8 tentacles of terror that they have and targeting Israel. And given that, with the situation that is developing in the Middle East, how difficult is it for India to navigate these animosities that exist on the ground in the Middle East? You have got the Arab worlds on one side, you have got Iran on the other side. Israel is trying to have this Abraham Accord. It is kind of, not working right now. So it's a very complex region right now. How is India going to navigate this region in particular in next year?
You're quite right in saying that it is a complex region, and nobody has claimed that it is easy to manage India's diplomacy in such a polarized and fragmented region, which seems to be at war with itself. But while Iran may be virulently antagonistic to Israel, that cannot be said about India. India has to balance its interests. India has massive interests in the region. It has Indian diaspora, which is to the tune of about 9 million people. Millions and millions of dollars are received in India through remittances there. The big dependence on oil and gas, and of course, eventually the geopolitical stakes as well. So, as a power with ambition to be a leading power on the world stage, India has to see as to what exactly is happening, how it is impacting on its interests, and then build alliances and friendships and partnerships. So, given that background, it is very clear that India is on good wicket with Israel, with Saudi Arabia, with UAE, and with other moderate regimes in the region. And as I said earlier, it works in alignment with the US. On the other hand, it is not so totally aligned to this group that it would ignore a country like Iran, which is almost the next door neighbor. The dependence on Iran also, until recently, for oil was quite significant. And Iran also, as you rightly pointed out by referring to Chabahar port, is a country which can help us to give us access to Central Asia and also to Afghanistan. So Iran's economic and geopolitical importance is also obvious to India. We have to keep taking things on issue-based diplomacy. This is what New Delhi has been doing. And India continuously projects the idea that if there are differences among states, they better resolve them through the path of dialogue and diplomacy rather than through violence. And that is what we are trying to do.
So, if we can discuss a little more in detail about India-US relationship under Trump. So, how do you think? Whether we admit it or not, there have been, as you said, there have been some problems when Biden was in power. What caused that, and how is it that Trump is going to help us overcome that? Do you think India-US relations, because when it comes to, say, critical technology and all, it's not that Biden did not sign that pact with us. So we have got a lot from the Biden administration, but there was in terms of, I think, that this whole point about weaponizing foreign policy values, weaponizing values basically. So that was a problem. So how do you think the relationship is likely to metamorphose during Trump's time?
Right. So just for a second, first on the Biden era.
Yeah.
Why do the differences occur? I think fundamentally because the world looks different from Washington as it looks different from Delhi. There are natural divergences which will apply, in fact, even in future as well. That was the reason why I wanted to make that. Differences arose on our, what was seen to be neutral approach on Ukraine. Differences arose because of the Khalistani issue. Differences also arose on, perceived US support for, minorities in India, and then above all on Bangladesh issue, where, New Delhi felt that fundamentally it was the Biden administration which helped the kind of sudden change in Bangladesh. So all those factors were there. But overall, the bilateral cooperation progressed well, and I think the total balance sheet would show itself into plus as far as US-India relationship was concerned in the Biden years. In future, I think experts are divided. Some believe that, the friendship between the leaders, the top leaders, is very good, and that Mr. Trump would be, very helpful and very kind to India. Others who believe that they would prefer to see Mr. Trump's approach in the first few months and see how particularly he handles China. If he handles China softly, that would be one scenario. If he handles China harshly, that would be another scenario, and it will have implications for India. So, for me, at this stage, without claiming to be a US expert or expert on US affairs, I can say that we should be ready to judge uh, Washington through its pragmatic actions, and we should remain optimistic. I think it's not just a question of India getting a lot out of the US. The US also will get a lot out of us. So, if there is balance and reciprocity in our helping each other to build up our role on the world stage, that would be, in my view, the right thing to do. And that is the reason why I remain optimistic that under Mr. Trump, the relationship will continue to move in a positive direction.
Yeah, and before I ask my next question, I just want to point out that there has just come, information has just come that Trump has invited Xi Jinping for his inauguration and for his oath taking, which is very interesting. I guess perhaps he's trying to start the US-China relationship on a positive note. Now, having said that, now specifically if we are looking at the case of Bangladesh, now, what exactly is the US trying to do over there, and what exactly? I mean, now there is some kind of a convergence of interests, it seems, and Bangladesh, I would say, is trying to make its foreign policy congruent with Pakistan is doing. What this is, isn't it insane? What exactly is going on in this area?
Bangladesh is a country in which I have taken very keen interest. I headed the division in the Ministry of External Affairs, which was responsible for India-Bangladesh relations. Bangladesh is a very important neighbor for us. It has been a friendly neighbor. What is happening there now, since July, August, the sudden change, the ouster of Sheikh Hasina as Prime Minister and the coming in of the interim government, clearly a set of factors were behind it. Sitting in Delhi, one gets a clear impression that the Biden administration played a certain role. But there were other local actors and perhaps regional actors, tracing themselves to Pakistan, which brought this change. I think for the past 15 years, there was such great stability and warmth in the relationship between India and Bangladesh that some of these forces did not like it. They got an opportunity and they used that. So, anyway, now you are in a situation where there are issues between the two countries. And in that context, I must say with satisfaction that the government of India did just the right thing. They arranged the visit of Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri, who was received very well in Dhaka, who met his counterpart, also the Foreign Affairs Advisor and also the Chief Advisor, Muhammad Yunus. And I think the visit was used by both sides to put across their perspectives quite clearly and frankly. So at this stage, I get the feeling that the temperatures have been brought down a little bit. I think it's important for our civil society to give enough room to our government to bring normalcy back in the relationship, because we cannot afford to have a very strained or bad relationship with Bangladesh, and certainly Bangladesh cannot afford to have unduly strained relationship with India.
But do they understand that? Does Bangladesh understand that? Because the kind of rhetoric that is coming from there, I mean, everyone is talking about things like, we are going to capture Calcutta in 4 days, we are going to march into India, we are going to set up an air base or revive an air base near Lalmonirhat, which is near the Chicken Neck corridor, the Shiliguri corridor. And we are going to separate the northeast, and this is coming from so-called responsible politicians, and even Yunus is saying things like, we are not going to be subservient to India and all. I mean, do they understand what they are talking about? Isn't it their responsibility as well to bring the temperatures down?
You are absolutely right. I think it is their responsibility as well. I'm aware of this very strong rhetoric which is emanating from Bangladesh. It's not good for the relationship, it is not good for the environment, and it's certainly not good for those who would like to bring the relationship back to normal. I think the civil society in Bangladesh, the media in Bangladesh, the think tank community, and the government, they all have to play their role. I think sooner rather than later, parties need to realize that good, strong, cooperative, and cordial relationship between India and Bangladesh is in mutual interest. Now, we are the bigger country. We are the ones who uh, made the relationship so good in collaboration with the previous government, not for 1 or 2 years, but close to 15 years. And above all, we are the country which played a seminal role in the liberation of Bangladesh. So we also have a role, and that is why while people are upset here, people are quite distressed, particularly by the attacks on minorities, especially Hindus. We are all watching the way the institutions have been treated there. But at the end of the day, if we want peace and stability and eventually progress in South Asia, and if we want India to tackle these things in a positive manner, I think our civil societies will have to allow the governments the freedom, the room to contribute meaningfully to the resolution of all these issues.
Yeah, I think India is big enough, and I think civil society, media, and all, our government will get it. But I have got my serious doubts about Bangladesh, because the kind of, as I'm going to again mention, but don't they realize that, call it the tyranny of geography or whatever, on three sides they're surrounded by India. They don't have anyone else but to go to India, but to turn to India when push comes to shove. I don't think that realization has sunk in.
I will let them look at their own map and their own situation and draw their own conclusions. And I would essentially say that my reading suggests that Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri went and explained the whole thing to them in a very civilized diplomatic language. People have to draw their own conclusions. They are the best judge of their interests.
that's like classic Indian diplomacy, I must say. But what, of course, I mean, being a seasoned player in that, I can expect that you said so many things without saying anything.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, the thing is that if we can talk a little bit about BRICS and future, I mean, what exactly is, and specifically in the context of China, because you see, we will have to, I mean, when you're talking about India's foreign policy in the next 1 year, 2025, you cannot, there's no escaping China. So, if you can explain a little bit about which way the BRICS is headed and exactly China's role, because we have discussed this earlier
Yes,
as well.
indeed.
And, about China is perhaps trying to make it into a very Sino-centric body. What exactly is the role that India is playing in BRICS?
Right. Thank you very much. I think I will have a few things to say about both BRICS and China's role in BRICS, and perhaps just a couple of lines for India-China relationship. BRICS is a plurilateral grouping which is coming up quite nicely. India is very proud to belong to it as the founding member. It has now gone up from 5 countries to 9 countries, and it has invited 13 countries to be member states. So clearly, BRICS is being taken seriously by the world and by those who want to join it. It has tried to reform the global order. It has not succeeded in this task all that much, but it is able to present an alternative view which is different from the G7 or the Western view. And I feel that it will improve further as long as it does not rapidly become too big an organization. So it is doing economic cooperation measures, it is doing security and political coordination, and it also wants to strengthen the people-to-people relations among the members of BRICS. Now, with regard to the BRICS currency and China's role, it's very important to understand that perhaps barring one or two countries in BRICS, nobody is interested in BRICS currency. So, Foreign Minister was completely right when he said there is no proposal by BRICS to go in for a brand new BRICS currency. I think the talk really picked up momentum after the West imposed sanctions on Russia in light of the war in Ukraine. So perhaps Russians, in coordination with the Chinese, started saying, let us create a new BRICS currency. India never was supportive of this, and India has always said that the most we can do is to use national currencies for bilateral trade transactions, which is the normal thing. So effectively, de-dollarization is really the creation of Western media. They are the ones who keep talking about a BRICS currency, whereas BRICS countries themselves keep saying that we have no such proposal on the table. And now that more moderate countries have joined BRICS, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and others, the question of BRICS currency, in my view, does not arise in the foreseeable future. With regard to the last section, India-China relations, I think we have to recognize that the year that is about to end, 2024, would be remembered for the beginning of a reset in India-China relations. In May-June 2020, what happened in India-China relations in Galwan Valley, the death of 20 Indian soldiers and I think one officer and several Chinese soldiers as well, created a very bad situation for the relationship. And it took us 4 years to start resolving them. We are now in the phase of trying to go into de-escalation and better measures for border management. So as soon as 2025 begins, my understanding is that two big things will happen. One, the national security advisors will sit down and talk about the border issues, and two, foreign secretaries of the two countries will start chartering a diplomatic course for the relationship. And I hope in due course the foreign ministers will start visiting each other's capitals. So 2025 would be worth watching for how India-China relationship blossoms in a calibrated manner in the months to come.
No, but then can China be trusted? I mean, China, this may be some sort of a reset when we are talking about. Is it a pause in terms of what exactly? Because China wants to be the hegemon. China is the hegemon when it comes to perhaps, and China is looking at the world from bipolarity. On one side there is US, on the other side there is China. When it comes to, say, for example, the Asian century that everyone keeps talking about, 21st century being the Asian century, there is no place for India as far as China is concerned. So, is this reset is actually a pause, or is it going to lead to anything really positive maybe in the long run?
You're quite right. I think 2020 has eroded whatever trust India had in China. So that trust sort of account is close to zero. It has to be rebuilt. It has to be resupplied. I think the fact that after so many meetings of the coordination mechanism, they managed to reach understanding on disengagement shows that they are now putting some credit into that bank, into that trust bank. So we will have to rebuild the whole thing. We will have to reconvince and persuade China that India will never accept a unipolar Asia. For India, this is the fundamental thing, that the continent must be suffused with multipolarity, which means that India will never accept the hegemony of China. Frankly, the history of relationship shows that there have been good phases and there have been bad phases. I would like to believe that 2024 has just started a better positive phase, and how good it would be will depend on the mutual efforts.
Here, I mean, especially in the context of Donald Trump coming to power, because I'm looking at it in context of what happened when Trump was there in the first term. There's a huge push that came for Quad, okay, and specifically Indo-Pacific policy. I mean, that particular, they changed their name from that Pacific Command to Indo-Pacific Command and all. There was also some talk in terms of building some kind of an Asian NATO. And there was a push that was coming from the Trump administration in terms of where India can be part of that, because ultimately the goal is about, if I can use that word, quote unquote, containing China in the Indo-Pacific. So do you think that sort of a push is again going to come on India, given India's, I mean, multipolarity, stand towards multipolarity? So how will India negotiate that particular? Because a lot depends on that in terms of India-US relations as well.
So there are two things on this, or two aspects to this. One is the US motivations, and the other is likely India's Indian approach. I think US motivations will be shaped by the kind of approach they take towards China. People are divided in deciphering as to whether Mr. Trump will be tough from day one on China, or whether he would try a mixed approach perhaps a little later. So let us wait and watch rather than only speculate as to what Washington under President Trump will do vis-a-vis China. Frankly, even the Chinese do not seem to know as to what to expect. They simply hope that it will not be really bad, but who knows how good or bad it would be. Sitting here in Delhi, it's very difficult, barring for some real insider to know as to how the US-China relationship would be in the first 6 months. As far as India's approach concerned, I think India is very proud that it contributed to the Quad, and it shaped Quad in terms of its own requirements. For much of the work of Quad, the military aspects have been taken out. They are being handled separately. The Quad is seen as a multi-dimensional collaborative partnership, strategic partnership involving US, India, Japan and Australia. So now in the Trump era, what precise shape it will take, it will depend firstly on US-China relationship, and secondly on ideas that the new administration brings as to how further this collaborative enterprise can be expanded. I think we need to stress to our viewers that in the new year, as of now, it is India's turn to host the 2025 summit, which can bring President Trump here. Probably this will not happen right in the first few months. It might happen a little later. So both sides, as well as the other two countries, Australia and Japan, should have sufficient time to ideate, to strategize, and to bring convergence among their approaches.
Yeah, okay, now in this context, now since we are discussing Quad, because you see, there is a thought process in the West as well, that Quad, as you said, the military part is being handled separately, that because the military part is being handled separately, perhaps as you are talking about, bilateral defense ties
Malabar.
and then Malabar exercises and all that. But then on the other hand, we have something like that AUKUS, where Australia, and it's a purely military alliance. So because of that, the importance of the Quad has gone down. Would you agree with that?
I respectfully disagree. I think the AUKUS, which is US, UK and Australia, it's a long-term project and it's a very limited number of countries involved there. The Quad is above all an attempt to win the hearts and souls of countries in Asia. particularly Southeast Asia. ASEAN, as you know, has 10 countries. They, by and large, try to play neutral between the US China confrontation. The Quad seems to have a good future provided we know what the US China relationship will be.
So a lot depends on that.
Absolutely. That is a
So,
vital question.
Well, okay, then if I can conclude by asking you overall, how do you see India's foreign policy shaping up in 2025? How important is the year 2025? If you can.
I think I'll be very brief and cogent. I would express confidence that our leadership and our diplomatic machine have performed very well in the Department of Foreign Policy and Diplomacy in the past decade. That gives me confidence that 2025 is going to present opportunities which will be meaningfully and constructively exploited by India. I think we need to focus on South Asia, bring peace and stability and friendship here. This in turn will help India to play a bigger role on the international stage. India should continue with its wide worldview that encompasses the global South, Africa, global Latin America, South Pacific. And of course, India would not forget West Asia and Europe as well. So 2025, we enter with a degree of confidence, but we know that there will be challenges as well.
No, I mean, actually, I think I'm just going to extend the last question a bit because you use the word challenges. Now, when you're talking about challenges, there's a lot of negativity that comes in the narrative department, specifically from the West. The kind of, a lot of things are said about India. In fact, today only I was reading an article about, how you cannot trust India. India will never come and support the US if China tries to capture Taiwan. So, I mean, how do you handle that negativity, the narrative part? At times as a lay person, to me it seems like our MEA, our diplomats are not active enough in, I would say, countering the negativity that emanates particularly from the West.
Madam, I would simply say that there was a time back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Criticism used to come to India's way then as well, but that was the time when India was a poor country. Today, India is the fastest growing economy in the world. India's strength is growing. India's image is improving by the day. India's confidence has increased. India has a stable political system. India has a strong charismatic leader. So let us be very clear, criticism will come and it will improve. We don't have to answer every criticism. We should focus on prudent and balanced policies and their implementation, and the rest will simply fall in place properly.
Well, so we have let's hope 2025 is going to be positive. We have a lot of things to look forward to. Thank you, Ambassador Bhatia.
Thank you very much
For being here. And thank you, viewers, for watching. Until the next time.